I saw something troubling not too long ago, well, maybe a little while, regarding rumors for the iPhone 14. So there's no red lights on right now, not getting wrapped around the axle about this, but it is a point of concern that I'm curious about because they're talking about that there might be a reuse of the A15 Bionic chipset in the iPhone 14 this fall. Now, they're saying that the iPhone 14 Pro would have a newer chip, presumably the A16, but they're saying that it looks like indications are pointing to we might end up with an A15 chipset in the iPhone 14. That would be a reuse of the same chip from last year. The reason that's concerning, and there's actually even probably some logic for it, and I want to discuss this because before we get too wrapped around the axle over the idea of being charged for a new phone with last year's hardware in it, because that's really not cool a year later, but considering the current state of affairs, all the supply chain shortages, all the silicon issues we're dealing with again here this year, it makes some sense. Now, I hate saying that, but I definitely don't agree with it. I can say it makes sense and not agree with it at the same time. You're going to have to hear out my logic here. So basically what happened last year in the iPhone 13 and iPhone 13 mini, it had the A15 Bionic, but it had the 4 gig of RAM model and it was running 4 GPU cores. And then the Pro model had 6 gigs of RAM and 5 GPU cores. So there was a stratification there. There is actually a little bit extra juice under the hood, a little bit extra core in the GPU, a little bit extra RAM for the Pro models. That makes a lot of sense. So what we're looking at probably this year, if this does come true, is the A15 Bionic processor, the one that was in the Pro last year, going into the regular iPhone 14 model this year. So I do have heartache with that because it's not a new chip. Now, but do we need a new chip? Because the A15 Bionic chipset is amazingly powerful. I don't even feel like the iPhone 13 Pro takes full advantage of it. We're kind of at a position when it comes to using iOS in its current form is still supported very, very well on the iPhone 6s. So when you look at the iPhone 6s, the iPhone 7, the iPhone 8, still using the exact same operating system as our good friend the iPhone 13 Pro, do we need the new chipset and the extra horsepower? Now, if they're going to do this, I would fully expect that hopefully they would give us some sort of a price decrease. But of course, it's Apple, so there's no way that's going to happen. So what I fully expect to happen is we'll be paying full price for last year's technology. And here's one of those things. We've been chasing this year after year after year. There's so many incremental upgrades. We're down to such small nanometer processors now. They're so powerful. They do so much stuff. It's like having a massive, powerful computer at the palm of your fingertips that you're still continuing to use the same apps we've been using for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, fundamentally still the same. So for most people, there will be no tangible difference whether you get an A16 processor or an A15 processor in your iPhone 14. There might be some extra power and some additional battery savings just because presumably we'll get a more narrow nanometer on the A16 Bionic processor that would presumably be out this fall. So talking about it big picture, does it matter big picture? I don't think it matters big picture, but philosophically and as an advocate for the consumer, not the business, this kind of irks me because it feels like if they can get away with this once, like if they can go ahead and rehash this and pawn it off to us, they can do it again next year. And then they're going to keep doing that. And then they're going to further stratify the hardware for the phones. So we're going to have the regular iPhone 14 and then we'll have the Pro. And then there's going to be a big difference between it because you'll get that newer chipset. And then that'll give you a reason to pay more money, which who knows if they'll even raise the price even more. I don't know. We're kind of out in make-believe land right now. But I don't like the idea because this sets a really bad pretense. And it's funny because there's a lot of companies already doing this with Android phones. So this is probably where they stole the idea. You've probably heard of the Snapdragon 860 before, the Snapdragon 865. Well, those have been revamped. Basically what they do is they take them and they have basically like a 10% power boost to them, and then they rename them something like the Snapdragon 870. So this is not without merit. It's not something that hasn't been done, but whenever you look at how it's been done, so that is something that I've seen. That's something that we've all experienced. I mean, it's something that we've got right here in the Realme GT Neo 3. It's got a Snapdragon 870 in it, and the Snapdragon 870 basically is just a supercharged Snapdragon 860. So it's not something that's unfounded. It actually works out pretty well because I think the 860 was a really good chipset. I also think that the A15 is a very good chipset. But to turn around the next year, and we know that the iPhone normal phones only come out once a year. That comes out in the fall. So by the time we get the new one 2 years later, we're already running into innovation issues. We're already running into, basically, we're getting the same phone year after year and year after year. They're going to turn around and charge people the same amount of money. But then you have to also go, okay, well, is the same person buying an iPhone 13 or an iPhone 14 that bought the iPhone 13 last year? Would you even be expected to go do something like that? Or does this make more sense because somebody who's getting the iPhone 14 might be using an iPhone 12 or 11 or a 10s or something like that? So there's a lot of different arguments that can be made. Of course, they like to save the environment. That's why we're not getting a charger. I mean, they were brave and courageous. That's why they took the charger out and then sold you a different charger so you could pay more money for it, right? And created a completely different method of charging. I don't find that very environmentally conscious, but whatever. I really don't buy into that whole argument that they made with taking the charging base out to save the environment. Anyway, so it wouldn't be something that they could put past me that they wouldn't do this. That's why it's a very plausible thing for me. When I read this, I see some very prominent and some very reliable sources for rumors and leaks that have come out that are saying this. So if it does happen, I won't be surprised. I don't think that it should happen. I think that we should continue on the same path where, yes, we continue to get the same hardware with the 14 that we get with the 14 Pro. I think that's the most fair and equitable thing to do. And sure, if they want to give you 4 gigs of RAM in the normal one and give you 6 gigs of RAM in the Pro arguably needs that. It has some more Pro features. So they're already taking certain features and setting it aside for the Pro. You're already getting the extra camera in the Pro. Are they going to give you the new processor and then leave you hanging out in the wind for 2 years in a row with the same processor? In the lesser model, I would advocate nobody buy that phone. I would say go buy the iPhone 13 and save yourself quite a bit of money and stick the middle finger to Apple. That would be what I would say to do. So we'll see what happens. Curious to see if it comes to fruition. Would not surprise me at all if it does happen. And we'll go from there. What do you think? Is this something you think Apple would do? Do you think this is something that they would entertain doing to people? And I'm telling you right now, if they do it, it's going to be under the guise of supply chain shortages, which they probably won't admit, even though they're saying that the iPhone production's been pushed back a few weeks already. But I guarantee you that they would probably say that, well, we're reusing it. We're being environmentally conscious. And of course, there's an argument for that. There is. But whenever they do so many things that are not environmentally conscious, and it's always in their favor that makes them more money for the alternative, I have a hard time buying into that. So neither here nor there. We're going to move on. Done talking about this. You go to the comment section. We'll talk about it. Let's see what everybody else thinks. So that's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.